Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Gopinath ki Jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai, Gaur Pramananda.
Hari Hari Bol.
So, good evening to everyone. Thanks so much for coming. So, again, my pleasure to be here with all of you. And I may speak in a row, no problem? Okay. So, welcome to all the ones connected there also as well. As we were doing yesterday, we are inviting whoever may like to present if they have any questions, something you would like to hear about, some topic you would like to, we may try to develop, to go deep into it. Yes.
I would like to ask about some sort of dividing line between what actually acharya is supposed to keep and what he can change to keep the tradition intact. It's,
okay. Big topic.
Jak je vlastně jaká se dělící rovina mezi tím, co acharya by měl zachovat v té tradici a co může změnit?
Jako místa času.
Místa času. Kde šakala patra?
Well, recently we had some discussions about it with some devotees and good brothers and good sisters. Some beautiful turmoil was there in order to turn the hearts and invite us to become more and more essence seekers. I won't go into detail in that direction, but I will speak about the same thing, because that's a very updated question. It never ceases to be updated. Because when we speak about an acharya, well, the term itself speaks. The term speaks for itself. Someone who is teaching by acharya. Yesterday we speak about acharya. Someone who teaches with her own example. So what does it mean in the practice, in practical terms? So we can speak about two expressions of what's expected from the acharya, if you will, regarding his presentation of the teaching. Many other things we could say about the acharya, but let's concentrate in this direction. That is connected mainly to the question. So how to establish some sort of dividing line between the different aspects of the tradition. So when we speak of tradition, the very word tradition may seem a little bit orthodox, not like preserving the ancient teaching as it is. And yes, that's correct. But what does it mean to preserve something? We are Vaishnavas, so we are aspiring to be Vaishnavas. That means Vaishnavism is connected to the term Vishnu. So Vishnu is the deity in charge of sustainability, preservation. You know, Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. So it's relatively easy to start something, to create something. It's much more easier to destroy something, what you have started. But the most complicated thing is to maintain that thing you have started. So because of that, Vishnu, the highest of the three deities, is in charge of that department. The preservation department. Because in order to preserve something, whatever thing, not even our particular tradition, but in order to preserve anything, some dynamic spirit is required. I mean, you cannot maintain something in the same exact situation forever. But everything is moving, is changing, is developing. Nature is alive, is constantly moving, is in flux. In flux. So everything around us is in flux. So we should be properly in line with that flux as well. So what to speak when we approach such a dynamic tradition as Gaudiya Vaishnavism? How much flux is there? When we choose to become members of Sampradaya, and a particular parampara in that Sampradaya, means we are being plugged into a particular type of flux. Something that is flowing in a particular direction. The Istadeva of our Sampradaya is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Mahaprabhu, as you know, is Krishna himself wanted to taste Radha Bhava. So it's Krishna himself wanting to flow in that particular flux. The very word Radha means, well, in one sense the highest worshipper. But if you keep repeating the syllables, Radha, 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 you get to the word Dhara. Dhara, 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 Dhara. And Dhara means current, or flux. Something that flows in a particular direction. So Radha will mean that personality which represents the topmost flux, always in the direction of pleasing Krishna. So I'm saying all this just to, in some terms, we understand we are part of something very flowing, like. So a member of the Sampradaya, specifically an acharya, should have this dynamic spirit. Actually, all of us should have this dynamic spirit. Yesterday we spoke a little bit when Annapurna asked about Kanishta, Madhyam, Uttam. And we spoke, today I was seeing some brief talk by Bhakti Vichar Vishnu Maharaj also, and he was also speaking about that yesterday in Mexico. And about how the Kanishta is someone that has not too much flexibility, doesn't have the capacity of accommodating certain details, and sometimes the neophyte tends to make the relative details some absolute thing. And by doing that, he may be making the absolute thing sometimes relative. Because a neophyte is more focused on is still in the relative aspect of guru, of the practice, of whatever. It's part of the process. So that's the closest thing to that practitioner, the relative stuffs. And that person tends to take the relative and make that like an absolute, like sutra for the rest of eternity. And that takes that person maybe to relativize the absolute actual aspect. And Vishnu Maharaj was explaining how the Madhyam, the intermediate devotee, is a much more progressive personality. And he knows how to understand and how to separate the relative from the absolute. Or what we can call in English the principles and the details. These two things are always there. We have the absolute consideration and the relative consideration. Or the formal consideration and the substantial consideration. Put the name you want. But those two expressions are always there. I mean, always there, at least you are in this world, and especially if you are trying to speak to the world.
v tomto světě, a když chceme mluvit ke světu,
about higher truths.
na vyšší pravdu.
So sometimes some of our acharyas had taken, let's call it, preaching strategies
Ty ačarové přijali takzvané kazatelské strategie,
in their attempt to present the absolute consideration.
v jejich snaze představit absolutní záležitosti.
But when we try to present the absolute consideration to a relative audience, we should have in mind certain relative considerations.
Ale když se snažíme prezentovat tyto věci relativnímu publiku, který je relativní hodný, tak musíme používat určité relativní pojmy.
So let's give some example. Srila Prabhupada saying, sometimes he said, we fall from Golok Vrindavan. So what to do with that? Because every other part you read, Jiva never falls from the spiritual world. So, dilemma. And Rupa Goswami says, when you find two apparent contradictory statements in the scripture, you shouldn't take the one you like the most. It's not that I pick the thing that is more comfortable for me. If I'm after the truth, I will be disposed to do whatever is necessary to reach the final truth. So that's what we call siddhanta. Perfect final conclusion. So Prabhupada sometimes say we fall from Golok Vrindavan in some conversations. In his books he never said that. He said no one can fall from the spiritual world. So again, you have to harmonize that. There is a relative consideration there and an absolute consideration there. Absolute consideration is siddhanta, what our Goswamis, our Shastra Gurus have taught us. One of the things, Shiva doesn't fall from the spiritual world. That shouldn't be an issue. I mean, we should be clear about that. No one can fall from Golok and down from Vaikuntha. That should imply so many contradictions in our practice. It's not the topic of today, but just try to imagine if you fall from Golok Vrindavan, from Vaikuntha means no anxiety. So imagine if you are in a place where at every moment there is the chance of someone falling from there to the material world. And if you follow that philosophy, all of us have fallen from there. So imagine, so many millions unlimited jivas constantly falling from Vaikuntha here. How can you call that place Vaikuntha? No anxiety. You see your friend, I'm falling too. And you feel, oh, maybe I'm the next, what to do? No, I mean, it's called Sakunta, full of anxiety. So it makes no sense. Because, again, Vaikuntha is a place where people with pure bhakti is there, pure love. And the capacity of pure love is Krishna Karchini, means capturing Krishna himself. Try to imagine this. When you have Prem Bhakti, you are not only transcending Maya Shakti, but you are capturing Krishna. So, if Prema Bhakti captures Krishna, what to speak of making us transcend Maya Shakti, attracts the all attractive? How can someone with such a Prem be attracted to Maya Shakti? if Prem Bhakti not only transcends Maya Shakti, but attracts Krishna. So lots of inconsistencies are in that theory. So, but the point remains, why Prabhupada said that? So there we go to the relative consideration, or what we may call preaching strategy. But for understanding that, we have to put in place so many considerations of Desha, Kala, Patra, time, place, circumstance. And sometimes for understanding this, we should really be ready to make a whole social and generational study of the particular moment where the acharya was speaking. Because if not, we can say, yeah, Prabhupada said that, and we repeat it, but we are not fully aware of why he said that, which was the environment he was facing at that moment, and so many considerations.
Když my uděláme, tak vlastně nebudeme brát úvahu tu situaci a spoustu věcí, které tím souvisí.
The other day I was reading one very nice book about life and precepts of Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta. It's actually a PhD study from one devotee. Very recommended book. It's called Modern Hindu Personalism by a Swedish devotee. You know him. Pramadnath. Ferdinando Sardella, his PhD name. And he there, what he mainly makes is trying to go in depth into the moment that Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta was, and which was the reality surrounding him at that moment. But very detailed study of the political time, the social circumstance, so many relative things, but that helped the reader a lot to understand why he did what he did. Because if you do not understand that, you may do just copy-paste of that and try to reproduce down 100 years after, and it won't work. Those relative strategies. Again, certain truths will be always the same. We are always Jiva, Krishna is always the Supreme Personality of God. But how you present those eternal teachings in a constant changing environment, that's a big challenge. Again, Bhaktivinoda Thakur took off the Upavita, the Brahminical thread, for showing Vaishnavas are beyond Varnashram. He took off. You won't see a picture of Bhaktivinoda Thakur with Upavita. Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta came and brought the Upavita back. Trying to show, to establish this idea of Daiva Varnashram. Because at that time, Varnashram's consideration was so strong in India, and he wanted to establish a preaching mission, Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta. So he wanted to create an order of sadhus inside the society, if you will. And since Varnashram was a main consideration in society, okay, let's enter through the door of Varnashram, showing how the Vaishnavas are part of that and beyond that after that. So, but again, the important thing is not if I have or not the thread. I know even of contemporary acharya who take the thread out again. Because they say, well, in Western countries it doesn't make a difference if they see you with this or that. They'll say, oh, Brahman. So the point is that we shouldn't get stuck into those relative details. So Srila Prabhupada mentioned this idea of returning to the idea of falling from Golok. Because try to imagine, he was coming from another planet, or coming to another planet. Now imagine a sadhu living in India at those times, living in Vrindavan for many years. At that time, Vrindavan was different than now, if you will. And suddenly crossing the ocean and landing into a different constellation called New York. We may try to imagine that, but we are not able to fully grasp what was the challenge there. So we know he was praying so much, he became empowered so much in the Jaladutta, so many things are there. And he arrived and he presented something, but on the way of presenting that, he started to make so many adjustments as well. You know, he said, for example, you should chant 1 lakh per day. And he immediately saw the faces of his disciples and he realized, oh, this was not be proper now. So he said, okay, don't desperate. 32 rounds. Half price. And the devotees still were like, too much. So he said, okay, half that, 16. but no less than that. So the point is, and sometimes nowadays even the devotees say we have to chant 16 rounds. And maybe someone chant 32, you are wrong. You should chant 16. Okay. But we should understand, Prabhupada, I initially wanted to give some standard. With this, I'm not saying everyone should chant certain number, because if not, I'm not saying that. Each case is individual. But my point is that he landed and he started to realize, oh, I have to be flexible in this, in that. And because of his flexibility, also, he was so successful. Because of many qualities, but one of those was he was very flexible. In a proper point, not going to the heterodox extreme of doing whatever thing. So regarding this idea of falling from Golok, understand that Prabhupada was facing a Judeo-Christian audience, basically. Basically no idea about Hinduism, what to speak of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, not single idea about it. No books published yet. Now we enter Google and download PDF, the whole database, whatever, but at those times. So he realized, oh, there is a strong Judeo-Christian DNA present in this audience. So sometimes he says certain things that may sound not so extremely different to the background of the audience he was facing. So he felt sometimes, you know, devotees coming from this Christian idea of falling from grace. And he felt, at this moment, if I explain to them the real philosophy behind why we are here now, that would be too much to digest now. It's like, I don't know, if a 2-year-old boy asks his mom or dad, Daddy, how I was born? How did I came here? So he will tell the old tale of cigüeña in English?
Chop.
Chop? The chop coming and putting in the chimney. You came home one day. And the child is happy with that story. Oh, nice. For that time, for that moment, it's okay. After some years, he will need a more specific, sophisticated theory. So the same is with the acharya and the disciples, like father and son, as we said yesterday. So Prabhupada realized, no, most of my disciples are, once he said, my grandchildren are coming, but my children are not coming, he said. Criticizing them, of course. Prabhupada gave himself in the form of sadhus like Bhakti-Rakkhaka Swami Maharaj. And you went to Sridhar Maharaj and he was saying something different than Prabhupada. And at the same time, Prabhupada said, everything I learned from him. So the challenge is there. How can I find Srila Prabhupada in this sadhu? Even though he's apparently speaking something different. So we have to go beyond the form and go to the substance. So in this, because of this, Prabhupada say, okay, we fall from Golok. No? Do not mess with the topic. Let's continue with spreading Krishna consciousness. But he had the idea in mind. With time, they will learn more in detail certain aspects. By saying this, we are not insulting Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada gave all, in one sense, but at the same time, if he were to be here today, he will be saying so many more things to his more qualified disciples. It's logical. I mean, the Guru can't give you everything from one. In one sense, he gave you everything. He gives you Harinam, he gives you Bhagavad. But the process of digesting all that and really measuring what's in all of that, that will take some time. And the Guru will be there to accompany Diksha Gurus, Siksha Gurus, the Guru principle. So So an acharya should be very well. So like this, we have many other examples. I won't enter into detail, but I know, you have the famous example of Buddha. Buddha is God saying God does not exist. Imagine such a preaching strategy. It's God himself, but he has to say, I do not exist. In order to take people to a certain stage where they can understand something more. So after that comes Sankaracharya saying, okay, let's bring back the authority of the Vedas, but everything ends in Brahman. Buddha say everything ends in Nirvana, 0. And Sankara say everything ends in Brahman, 1. 0, for 0 to 1 there is some progress. But after them came all the devotional acharyas, Ramanuja, Madhva, Mahaprabhu, showing that after 0 and 1 we have 108, 16,108 and an infinity positive numbers. But Buddha was Krishna, Sankara was Shiva, all of them were the same line, if you will, but covering certain things, not saying everything, because the relative situation didn't allow that. You see, but he was Krishna, he was Shiva. So you understand, and sometimes even God himself, or greatest people like Mahadev, like respond to the specific circumstance in order to teach the importance of this. The important Bhagavat commentator Sridhar Swami, Mahaprabhu revered so much his Bhagavat commentary, but you read his commentary and in many parts it seems he's promoting Mayavad. But actually he wrote the commentary in such a way to attract the impersonalist people from that time, and in such a way that finally take them to the essence of the Bhagavad. So again, there was some relative consideration there in order to how to deliver the absolute consideration properly. So many other things. The sannyas of Mahaprabhu, in one sense, is a preaching strategy. Krishna doesn't need to take sannyas. Krishna is not a sannyas. Krishna is a transcendental playboy. No? So suddenly he takes sannyas. So you have to understand why. So that's a preaching strategy in one sense. He considered at this present moment, I'm trying to give something, but people is not understanding me. I'm giving my Sanskrit grammar classes, explaining every dhatu, every verbal root in Sanskrit pertaining to the name of Krishna, but audience is not appreciating my madness. They think I've gone too mad. So I think I have to take some particular stance in society, so to take their attention more positively. Part sannyas is this, no? I have these clothes, so you say, oh, one Swami is coming, let's go, it's a Swami. That's a strategy to catch your attention. But our goal is not to be Swami, sannyasi. Mahaprabhu himself said, Naham viprona chana rapatim napi vaishana sudro naham nina chani rapatim domanasto yatirva kintu prodyam nikila paramananda purnamrita. There gopi vartu pada kamalayor dasa dasa anudas. He said, I'm not sannyasi, no vanaprastha, nor anything in varnashram. I'm just a servant of the servant of the servant of Sri Krishna, the beloved of the gopis. So, but Mahaprabhu say, okay, if I'm sannyasi, people will pay more attention to me. And if I accept sannyas from a Mayavad background, people will pay even more attention to me. So he received sannyas from Kesha Bharati, who was coming from Advaita Vedanta background. Of course, we know he was converted by Mahaprabhu in that moment when he said to him, I have a dream about the mantra you are going to give me. Is this one? And he repeated the mantra to Kesha Bharati before receiving. Tattvam Asi was the mantra at that time. That's not the same mantra sannyasis received now in Gaudiya tradition. So Tattvam Asi is one of the great Mahavakyas of Shankara, great postulates. In how do you say in ancient English, like tho? Instead of saying you are that, thou are, thou are.
This is the
But also a devotional perspective, that means you are his. You belong to Krishna. So Mahaprabhu repeated the mantra to Kesha Bharati with the devotional conception in mind. Is it the mantra Tattvamasi, you are his? And Kesha Bharati said, oh yes, that's the mantra. And he was initiated in the devotional conception. But externally he accepted sannyas from a Sankar background. And at that time, those sannyasis were especially privileged. So imagine, that's a whole preaching strategy. He sent Nityananda to get married also. He was an avadut, totally beyond social considerations. But he said, please marry, establish in society and preach. In those places I cannot go as a sannyasi. So, another preaching strategy there. And so many. So the point is, we should be able to understand the necessity of keeping in update with this idea of establishing. We should, on one side, know the teaching very well. I mean, I'm speaking in the case of an acharya especially, but of course all of us, but especially an acharya, should know the teaching of the scriptures very well. That's one of the main symptoms of the Guru mentioned in the Bhagavad. Tasman Gurum Prapadita Jignashu Sreya Uttama Sabde Pare Chanisnatam Brahmani Upasamasraya. So he has to be Sabde. He has to be knowledgeable in the scriptures. He has to, in order to solve the doubts of the disciples. And also, of course, he has to have inner wisdom, inner insight, be properly situated beyond the urges of his senses. So on one side, the acharya has to know the conclusions of the tradition. No? That's not something that will change. No? Again, it's not that jivas do not fall from the spiritual world, but since Prabhupada said it, now they start to fall from Vaikuntha. It's not like that. Sometimes I've heard devotees saying things like this, no? No, like Prabhupada created a new siddhanta, like thinking they were glorifying Prabhupada. But I don't think Prabhupada would be happy to hear that. That people saying you are creating a new siddhanta. It means you are getting apart from the siddhanta of your guru and the parampara. So Prabhupada himself says, if there is something bona fide in me, is that I have tried to present everything as I have received from my Guru. So, but also the nature of the siddhanta is unending. Because we may say, okay, the siddhanta is, many siddhantas are there, of course, many tattvas. Bhakti tattva, jiva tattva, maya tattva, nam tattva, sadhana bhakti tattva, bhava bhakti tattva, so many tattvas there, guru tattva. So when you properly get the knowledge of all these tattvas, that will give rise to particular types of realizations. And each member of the parampara have to give their own new realizations as a contribution to the whole line. It's not that you only repeat what your guru say to you. Of course, that's also there. But your guru will say, but you have to develop your own realizations, your own insights. Because you may repeat, like parrots repeat. But also parrots, as it said regarding to Sukadev, no? They bite the fruit, and when they pick, they can make the fruit even sweeter. So in the beginning we may be the first type of parrot, but with time it is expected that we become the second one, the one that may extract new insights from revelation. And because of this, there is always necessary a dynamic contribution of new commentaries to the scriptures. We spoke about that the other day. Ours is a tradition of commentaries. If you pay attention, so many of our acharyas have written commentaries to the same book. You yourself can ask why Srila Prabhupada wrote a commentary to the Bhagavad Gita. Because some people say nobody else can write any commentary after him. But you can also ask, but why did he write one if there were so many others before him? Why he did just not like translated and presented, I don't know, Baladevi Devotion's commentary, Vishwanath Chakravarti's, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commentary? Well, because of many reasons. One, he had his own realizations to share by properly connected to the previous commentaries and previous acharyas. New insights were there. And also because he presented the Bhagavad Gita, in the case of Bhagavad Gita, all the books he presented, in a particular language, considering the particular audience he was facing at that time. So the point is that times changed. From that time to now, it's more than 50 years, half a century. So also, Prabhupada himself, the other day I was reading one link where quotes of Prabhupada asking his disciples to write their own books, to write their own, to express their own realizations into their words. So that's a very important thing to do, to continue the flow of the Sampradaya, the Parampara. So, regarding these two considerations, the absolute consideration and the relative consideration, new commentaries are should be always there. Regarding the absolute considerations, new commentaries should be there so the acharya can share their own realizations. And regarding the relative consideration, new commentaries should be there also, in order to approach contemporary issues in a contemporary language even. Even on the grammatical level, sometimes after some years, some words are no longer in use, or some words start to have a totally different meaning than some years ago. At least in my country that happens a lot. And with this gender issue, and so many things that after some years require updating. And preaching means approaching a particular audience at a particular time with a particular psychology. So these are relative considerations, but we depend on them a lot. In the beginning, we don't have, most of the people doesn't have the capacity to get in touch only with the essential thing and transcend every relative aspect. So Prabhupada also considered these relative aspects and made his presentation in a very genius-like way. No, we know of many examples that he made in his time was practically condemned by many God brothers, for many people. Allowing ladies to enter the altar, to enter the kitchen, on this, on that, it's like, wow. So we see that actually every time, every acharya has to go through the same situation. The ones who are really dynamic, they know what adjustment to make, but most of the rest will be just criticizing them. Because they are not in that place and they can't understand what's going on there. In one sense, it's understandable, no? Because for one who never went out India, you cannot imagine what's going on at that time in the United States. So sometimes we need to make this exercise of trying to empathize, like to put ourselves in the place of the other, to really understand why did he say that, why did he did that. Because if not, we can quickly like conclude or judge the other person, but we didn't took the time to do that exercise of putting ourselves into the other person's situation. And also to know the person. Because I cannot give an opinion on someone if I do not know the person. So ours is a tradition, but it's a dynamic tradition. So that's it's a big challenge, because we have to present like an ancient philosophy, but in contemporary terms. The philosophy is the same. We won't change the siddhanta, but that can keep developing, no? The siddhanta on the original, let's say on the original siddhanta of our sampradaya. So many new realizations can come and should come year after year. But on the relative issue consideration, well, different sensibilities will be there, and this is a very individual thing. It's not an absolute law, like in this particular moment, 2019, the relative consideration to preach should be this for every acharya. That's not possible. Some devotee may be preaching in a particular country with a particular situation, and he had to take certain stance, and some other will be on the other side of the world taking a different stance. Externally, it seems they are doing different things, but their inner motivation may be the same. We want to help people to deliver Krishna to other souls, to present the message in a way that resound in the heart of people. So adjustments are there, but there is not some magic formula to know how to do it properly. For that we require intelligence, sensibility, good guidance, and especially to be open-minded. But also there will be some currents of people who will be more liberal and more conservative. And there is a place for that on some level also. I mean, remember that we are individuals. We are not just the same thing, all of us in the same way. Yeah, we are jivas, but individual jivas. So some devotees will be a little bit more flexible in some things in a proper way. Some others will be more conservative in some other things in a proper way. No problem. Diversity, but in the context of a common goal. So that should be celebrated. If we find diversity, but expressing itself in the context of unity, the common goal, we should celebrate that. That's our philosophy. Achintya Veda Veda. The same and different at the same time. You have to learn how to live with those, with that tension. Not too different, not too the same. Because if we go, everything is the same, we end in Brahman. And if everything is only different, it's just material duality and conflict. So we do not want to lose any of those, nor unity, nor diversity. We want the two of them. So each of them should learn how to complement in our life. So we should be very careful about not like criticizing some devotees for certain adjustment they are making, or at least before criticizing, taking the time of really entering to the background of what the other one is doing, why she is doing that, which is the particular environment there, what's the nature of that person that takes himself to do that. what's his intention behind that. All those things should be put in consideration before I conclude about. And even if all that consideration give the result of you are wrong, well, in that case you should be really merciful and try to help that person, and not just say, pointing and saying you are the devil, you are against whoever, you are an offender. But generally we should be the acharya should be really, well, very many things to say. Of course, the acharya will have his own, let's say, group or family or mission, and he will have his style, if you will, his mode of doing things, and naturally that will become some sort of extension to the ones who follow him or her. And that's okay. The point is that it doesn't get to the point of sectarianism, where any other expression is wrong and we are the best. So you may feel, oh, my Gurudev is the best, and the mood I have received from my Gurudev is the best for me, but not the best for the whole universe. Because if not, I enter into this Amar Guru Jagat Guru idea. My Guru is the Guru of the whole universe. I've heard people saying like that. And someone asking, what do you mean by that? Do you mean that every single person in the universe should be initiated by your Gurudev? And the person saying, yes. I say, oh my God. To begin with, that's not practical. And that's not really deep. Not to think only my Guru, everyone should come to the feet of my Guru because he's the topmost one. That's actually an extension of your own ego. Saying, since my Guru is the best of all, well, I'm his disciple, I'm the best of all. That's how it will end. But you can feel in yourself, oh yes, my Gurudev is the greatest. For yourself, between your God brothers, in a proper way. But if another disciple from another Vaishnava comes, you won't try to convince him about the superiority of your Gurudev. Actually, the etiquette there is, a Vaishnava can say, I will say, please chant the glories of your Gurudev for me. And after he will chant, he will say you, and now chant your glories of your Gurudev. It's not that, come and hear the glories of my Gurudev. Just shut up and hear me. No, that's not Vaishnavism. In Brihad Bhagavatamrita, we find a very nice example of this, where Gopa Kumar in his journey reached Ajodhya, and he meets Hanuman. So Gopa Kumar asks Hanuman. Both of them were devotees of the same person. In Tattva, the same person, Bhagavan. Tattva, philosophical truth. But in Bhav, in emotion, different. It was Ram for Hanuman, Madan Gopal, Vrindavan, Krishna Vrindavan, in Sakyaras for Gopakumar. But they knew we are worshipping the same person, but same and different. So Gopakumar said to Hanuman, please sing the glories of your Lord. So Hanuman starts to glorify Ramachandra. So Gopakumar hears that glorification, and he ends saying, Jai Sri Krishna. No? His faith in Krishna becomes nurtured by hearing the glorification of Ramachandra. And after that, Hanuman asked Gopakumar, please glorify your Madan Gopal. So Gopakumar starts to glorify Madan Gopal, and at the end Hanuman says, Jai Sri Ram. So that's how we should be inspired mutually in an ideal way. Chant the glories of your Gurudev, chant the glories of your Istadev, and if that's in a proper way, that will nurture my own faith in my Gurudev and my Istadev, and vice versa. We are not here trying to impose ourselves, our taste, our mood in others. That's not Vaishnavism. So this will be applied to this idea of the dividing line between absolute and relative considerations. Srila Maharaj speaks a lot about this in Sri Guru and his grace, about how Guru has this absolute, represents an absolute side, but it's also a relative side to Sri Guru. Long topic to speak now, but you can go to the book, that's much better. But it's important to make this difference. That's a sign of you are becoming a progressive practitioner. Because as I said yesterday, in the beginning, a neophyte doesn't make this difference. For him, her, everything is the same. No absolute, no relative, no form of substance. It seems it sounds very essential, but actually it's pretty sentimental yet. Part of the process, but it's not all. So we need to separate certain things. Sometimes the Guru says something, but in a particular context to a particular person, so that's not applicable for the other one. So if you just take that out of context, instead of following the footsteps of your Guru, you are imitating. That's called anukar and anusar. Anukar means following what the other does. Anusar means following sar, the essence of what the other is doing. So we should be open for this criteria in so many levels. In the scripture we find that, in the Bhagavad we find so many elements that in one sense are relative. For example, Bhagavad speaks about, I've heard the Buddha saying, the more important part of the 5th canto is where the Bhagavatam is speaking about if the earth is round or flat. No? So big debate has been there all this last time. And they say that's what the 5th canto is about. And also the description of the hellish planets. And also the forest of material enjoyment. And yes, that's there and has some particular value, but in certain context. The most important part of the Bhagavad, every canto, is bhakti. Bhagavatam is not an astronomy book. No? There may be some elements of astronomy and other things, but you should go to the essential idea that this, and understand. Maybe here it's saying something, not everything in detail regarding astronomy, but bhakti is the topic there. So, for example, 5th canto speaks about detailed description of hellish planets. I've read Bhaktivinoda Thakur saying that description is not to be taken as literal. Oh, it's like no? Sometimes analogies there. For example, for understanding a book about like the Bhagavad, you also have to get like imbibed in certain literary devices of the time. That's there also. To say that the Bhagavad speaks in different types of languages. It speaks like the Vedas, like the Puranas, or like the Kavya, the poetic books. Vedas means like a father, like giving orders, do this. No argument, do this. Purana is like a friend that tells you a story. Puranas are stories. Come, I will tell the story, and in that way teach you something. And Kavya means poetic, romantic language, hidden meanings in the conversation. Between lovers, they speak something, but in their own language. The rest is thinking, they are saying something, but they are saying something else. So all this all these languages are there in the Bhagavad. But if you don't know about that, you may take everything in a particular way, in a literal way. We come from a Western culture that tends to take things in a literal way many times. And in Indian thought, not only Bhagavad, but Indian thought, analogies are there always, symbolism, elements that are part of the language of the culture that if you should know to detect that in order to not take everything exactly in the literal sense of the term. And that it doesn't mean you are rejecting the Bhagavad. Actually, it means you are accepting it in a more substantial way. And with this, I'm not saying that Krishna is a metaphorical figure and he actually didn't exist. I'm not saying that. But there are certain elements that could be understood in that way. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said like that. He even explained Krishna killing the demons in a like archetypal way, like using Jungian terms, archetypes. Each demon representing a particular anartha. So you don't find that being said in the Bhagavad nor in the old commentators, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur brought that approach and he made sense of that, explaining each of these demons in a very logical way to our logical Western sensibilities. In that sense. For example, he say Putana represents the false guru, who presents in a very nice way that Putana came to Braj as a Lakshmi, but actually he was bringing some poison there. So he understood, okay, there is some symbolic message there that actually is speaking us of this. It doesn't mean that Putana didn't exist, but there's also some layers of meaning there. So we find all these things. Now, I once even read, I think, Krishna Samhita from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and he explained the Das Avatar in evolutionist Darwinian terms. Like first the fish, then the turtle, and like the species development. So, okay, you can say that that's some adjustment he made trying to approach West culture, maybe, but it's valid. I mean, try to understand his intention behind that. No? So yes, an acharya should be ready to properly establish the siddhanta. Sometimes, in some cases, as we saw with Prabhupada, given relative siddhanta circumstantially in order to take that person to the absolute siddhanta eventually. As when he said to some disciples, you fall from the log. I mean, I'm sure Prabhupada's intention was not to maintain that person with that idea forever. But circumstantially, he considered, yeah, thing like that. That would be good for you now. But later, you have to learn something else. So we should understand. No? That was not an absolute statement. It was a very specific circumstantial statement. So we should learn how to separate the absolute from the relative, and to become sensitive enough in order to how to adjust that in our presentation. And it won't always be fully successful, because you may be speaking to an audience of 40 people and present one point, and 39 of them are happy, and one of them may feel you are doing something wrong. That happens. That's the professional risk of preaching. But no problem. I mean, we can also continue speaking and make it clear that so-called confusion. So if something that can happen sometimes. One Srila Prabhupada was speaking with Srila Bhakti-Rakshita Goswami Maharaj, and one disciple of Prabhupada came and said, "What were you speaking about?" And Prabhupada said, "If I were to tell you, you will faint." And of course he didn't say anything. So the point is, there were some things that were maybe too high for some people to understand. But as we become qualified, we may become ready to properly understand that and not misunderstand that. So that's there everywhere. No? Before reaching the 10th canto, go through the first 9 first. Things like this, no? Mahaprabhu was not speaking about rasa, tattva, except with 4 intimate associates. So there is some like gradation, hierarchy, if you will, a protection actually. We should feel protected in that sense. But I think that's important, no? How the other day one devotee told me that there was, I don't know if what Krishna Kshetra Maharaj or some other of Srila Prabhupada sannyasi disciple, who was making some sort of seminaries trying to properly explain some of Prabhupada's controversial statements regarding women, black people, gay people, and some of the things that nowadays may seem like misogynist or racist or whatever, but actually he was explaining that in order to show he was not being misogynist. He was explaining that in a particular way, that he was doing that same presentation in the present language, if you will. So that's in service in this case of someone like Srila Prabhupada. Does not say something different against him or against the previous acharya. So, parampara means a dynamic issue, no? Dynamic participation. If not parampara, I mean, that means parampara. The word parampara means parampara, one after the other. One after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. So what's the meaning of parampara? If remember, it's not, if just repeating himself, themselves in a static way. No ecstatic, but static. It becomes like a dead, blind, basically. So, some words about it. I don't know if the idea is clear. Or of course, we can say much more, but at least something. 1 hour I spoke already. Because I consider it's an important topic to understand and to speak about. So we shouldn't be afraid of speaking about anything. Everything can be properly approached in a sincere and honest spirit. So we should feel that in Krishna consciousness, that we can speak about everything here. In an open way, sincere way. If we are sincere, we will get to the proper conclusion, sure. Even if we differ on certain things, we will be able to harmonize those differences. But if we agree in the most essential things, the difference will be an ornament, actually. No problem with the differences. But if very small relative difference creates such big chaos, it is showing we are not really properly connected into the essential thing. So, something like that. I don't know if there is another question, some other topic. We have some time. This is our last talk, so we have time. Another question? Was it clear what I said? Because as Gurudev say, if someone doesn't say anything, they understood everything or they understood nothing. So I want to make sure. Because it's not only speaking and just it's there, but trying to check some feedback if everything was properly digested. It may take time to digest, but for us,
I bring one topic from your speaking. Something like one vision on this point. It says, or it says, this topic that we fall from God, nobody can fall from spiritual world. And there is the topic about the Tatastha Shakti. It's between spiritual world and material world. Yes, like this topic. And we don't fall from the spiritual world. And one the vision and or one the point is Tatastha Shakti. Is there the influence of three modes of material nature? Because if it's not, then the Sattva, Rajas or Tama means it is Uttama, means beyond this influence of Maya, means it's spiritual. And if we fall from the Tatastha Shakti, we fall from spiritual energy, or we can say spiritual world. It's like a vision. You can speak about this because there is no influence of Maya. Means it is spiritual, but it says we never can fall from spiritual world.
But I didn't say I will fall from Tatastha.
I see that that topic is like this. That generally speaking about this, and I'm speaking about not that you.
No, I was joking.
That's what I says. I speak about the topic which you can have. Let's look at. Okay, we cannot fall from spiritual world, but Tatastha Shakti, there is no influence of Maya of three modes. I mean, let's look that we are in spiritual world.
Okay.
These energies. It's all it.
So I will share my particular opinion on the topic. Of course, it's not my creation, but it's what it is said in the Bhagavad Gita, what it is said in the Bhagavad, what it is said in Vedanta Sutra, what it is said in the Sandarbhas of Jiva Goswami, which are the main theological work of our Sampradaya. Jiva Goswami is our Tattva Acharya, or that person between the six Goswamis who was specially empowered by Mahaprabhu to establish the siddhanta. So this may be a little complex topic if this is the first time you are hearing, but hopefully it makes sense. If not, we can speak, and hopefully it doesn't create new controversy. But well, I have to speak the truth, and the question is there. So actually, when we go into detail about where is the jiva coming, it's the origin of the soul, or all these questions that sometimes appears, the topic of beginning, because of course our philosophy is not like Christianity that presents this theory of the world being created out of nothing, in Latin called ex nihilo. Something didn't exist and suddenly starts to exist. The world as being created out of nothing. That's not our philosophy. Our philosophy is everything exists eternally. God exists eternally, and his energies, Shaktis, exists eternally with him. Maya Shakti, Tatastha Shakti, Swarup Shakti. So there is no beginning to the world. I mean, there is a beginning and an end of cycles. There is no beginning to the cycles. There is no initial point that before that there was nothing. No, we speak in terms of circular time. In the whole Eastern philosophy, they think in circular time terms. Western is more like linear time, like timeline. This is started here, but Vedic conception is circular time. No beginning. No beginning to the breathing of Mahavishnu, if you will, where all the cosmic manifestations are coming in, coming out with inhale, exhaling. So the world has no beginning, Maya Shakti. The Jivas has no beginning. So the conditioning of the Jiva has no beginning. So that's what it's called in Sanskrit, Anadi Karma. Anadi means no beginning. Srila Rupa Goswami used a different term in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He said, when he spoke about different types of jivas, he spoke about Nitya Siddhas, means eternally liberated souls who are always there. Nanda, Jasoda, Lalita, Vishaka, Subal, Madhu, Mangal, Raktak, Patrak, eternal associates of Krishna. They have always been there. It's not that Jasoda became Jasoda. Although in Bhagavad we read, no, in previous life, Nanda and Jasoda perform austerities and Vasudeva and Devaki perform austerity, Prishni and Sutapa, like this. But this does in a particular context. It's not speaking that there was someone else. It's some well, it's other topic. That's not the topic. So Nitya Siddhas. Later we have Sadhana Siddhas, people who are reached Siddhi, perfection by practice. We have Kripa Siddhas, people who reach perfection through some extraordinary type of mercy, even without sadhana, like Putana. That shouldn't be our goal. Now, I won't practice anything and I will receive Kripa Siddhi. We are not of the club, of the Kripa Siddhi club. It's like living your life is, I won't work because I may win the lottery someday. So I won't do anything. Most probably you won't win the lottery. So better you start working. And maybe you win the lottery, who knows? Most probably not. Exception to the rule. So this Kripa Siddhi is exception to the rule. And after that we have what Rupa Goswami calls Nitya Bada. Means eternally conditioned. So that's us. Now we are sadhakas. We are no longer even Nitya Bada. We are in the midst of being a Bada and a Siddha, conditioned and a perfected soul. We are work in progress, what they call in English. We are conditioned souls already being enlightened or on certain degree by the grace of Sri Guru Parampara. So that's called sadhaka, practitioner. But we come from this idea of Nitya Siddha, being conditioned eternally. Now eternally doesn't mean no beginning and no end. So the technical exact term is anadi. Anadi means no beginning to your conditioning, but there is an end to your conditioning. Nitya means no beginning, no end. But that was how Rupa Goswami explained it popularly. So what you say in the question was right. I mean, actually, when we speak about Tatastha Shakti, it's a difficult topic, because try to understand if someone tells you, this is what Vedanta Sutra says. Vedanta Sutra says like this. It's important text. The Bhagavatam is mentioned as the natural commentary of the Vedanta. So naturally, if something is in the Vedanta, it must be in the Bhagavad as well. So at one point in the Vedanta Sutra, the text analyzes if God is partial or impartial. So that's an important point. So the question is being presented, is God partial? So the Vedanta Sutra said no, God is not partial. Samaham sarvabhutisu, say Krishna Bhagavad Gita, I'm equal to everyone. It would be a fault in God to be partial. Impartial. No, sorry, partial. Of course we know he's partial to his devotees, but that's another. He's partial inside impartiality, another topic. But so the Vedanta Sutra says, okay, but if God is impartial, why we see so many different situations in people? So many different karmic dispositions in different people. God is partial. So Vedanta Sutra says no. Every person is in a different situation. Someone is poor, someone is rich, someone is tall, someone is small, because of their karma. Okay, no? So the Vedanta Sutra like arguments itself and says, okay, now it's like that, but when that karma began, everyone began from the same situation. And the Vedanta said, no, because there is no beginning to karma. Anadi. End of the topic. And the Vedanta continues another idea. So maybe we from this part of the world, Western countries, we need more explanation to that. Because if someone says to you, your conditioning, your conditioned experience doesn't have a beginning, did not have a beginning. It's difficult to think in terms of that. Try to think about, you immediately think, when was the first time there's no first time. So some smoke starts to come from here. Because there's no beginning to the world cycles, to Maya Shakti, there's no beginning to the Jiva. And karma means connection between Jiva and Maya Shakti. So if the Jivas in this conditioned Jivas have no beginning, this world has no beginning, the connection between them, karma, has no beginning. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, verse 20, the word anadi appears. Adi means beginning, anadi means no beginning. And the commentary to that verse, Baladevi devotion, say this thing. The world has no beginning, the Jiva has no beginning, the relationship between the two has no beginning, anadi karma. So, and in the Bhagavad you find the word anadi so many times. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, one of the most famous commentators of the Bhagavad, almost every time the word anadi appears, he expresses from karma without beginning. So again, we do not fall from Golok Vrindavan, from Vaikuntha. We already explained that very briefly, but I hope it made sense to you. I hope you are not thinking that you fell from the spiritual world. If you feel that, tell me, and we keep explaining that till it's clear for you. Because that's a very delicate point. If you don't understand it clearly, you will be committing dham aparad, thinking the eternal abode of the Lord is fallible, and its inhabitants are fallible. That's an offense to the dham. But also, the idea of falling from Brahma Jyoti, but also the idea of falling from whatever you may like to call Brahman, Brahma Jyoti, Tatashta, doesn't find real support in scriptures if you start to look. First of all, we never read about the planet called Tatashta Loka. No? Tatashta is a Shakti. We are a Shakti. No? But it doesn't mean we are a planet. No? It's a Shakti. We are a Shakti. Tatashta means, it refers to this line, sometimes explained as the line between the ocean and the sand of the beach. So it means it's not a fixed line. You cannot establish and put your finger on the line. So it means we are very prone to be influenced by the environment. In the words of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, we are a product of the environment. You associate with matter, you become like matter. You do not become matter, but you fully identify with that, and you think, oh, I'm only matter. So many people think like this. But you identify with Swarup Shakti, Bhakti Shakti, and you really become part of that abode. Actually, our constitution is more, our potential is more connected to Swarup Shakti, because we can live in that environment forever. But if you entertain the idea of falling from Brahma Jyoti, some problems are there. You mentioned one. In the scripture it is said that in Brahman there is no gunas are not operating. There is no sattva, no rajas, no tamas. So how can you fall? I mean, Maya is made of sattva, rajas and tamas. The ingredients of Maya Shakti are the three gunas. So how can you fall from some place if there is no Maya Shakti to make you fall? So, I mean, how can you fall? I mean, what can make you fall from that place? Second, if that's a place, let's imagine Brahman is a place, Tatashta Loka. Let's for a minute have that idea. So And sometimes we hear, okay, from that place you got the chance of choosing between material world and spiritual world. But according to thy philosophy, you have never been in either of them or neither of them. So what's the value of choosing something that you don't know? You follow? I mean, if I have always been in Brahman, let's say, and someone says, okay, you can go to Golok Vrindavan or whatever, some place in Vaikuntha, or you can go to the material world. But the point is, I have no experience in that philosophy, in that theory of one or the other. So what's the value of choosing something that I don't know? What's that about? Do you follow? I mean, the value in a choice means you are voluntarily doing that because of certain awareness of what you are doing. Because it's just, if not like choose this or choose that, okay, let's go there. And even if someone says, no, but in that moment someone has shown you some like glimpse of what's in one place, what's in another, like a trailer of a movie. No? Here you have this, here you have that. So if we consider that idea, how can we possibly choose to come here? If we get a glimpse of Golok Vrindavan and the all-attractive abode of Krishna, there's no point of comparison. So there are many ideas of this, like we find that there, that makes this idea falling from there also not plausible. Plausible? You follow the idea? Possible. Okay, easier one. So this is the idea actually. That if you go in depth in and of course, certain acharyas have said something different again. As Prabhupada mentioned, we fall from Golok sometimes. Some other acharyas mentioned we fall from Brahma Jyoti. Again, with a particular idea in mind. But when you go to the Bhagavad, Vedanta Sutra, Bhagavad Gita, Goswami's books, you find something else. So again, you have to harmonize that. And of course, you won't say, no, Jiva Goswami said something, but now this acharya actually understood what Jiva Goswami was saying, and he's saying something different. No, it's not, siddhanta is not attained like that. Actually, you have to think, for example, someone said, Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Jaiva Dharma, he appears to be speaking about falling from Brahman. So, again, what to do? As I say, for a Kanishta Adhikari, that's not a problem, because they are not paying attention to all these things. But a Madhyama Adhikari is in the middle of all these troubles, trying to make sense of all the apparent contradictions here and there. But that's a necessary step in order to mature you, to make your faith mature. Because our faith should be what we call Shastriya Shraddha. Means our faith should be like founded on revelation of scriptures. So if for that we have to go to the scriptures and learn to properly understand the scriptures and harmonize apparent contradictions. And on that foundation our faith will grow. If not, we will have what Vishwanath calls Lokiki Shraddha, which means like weak faith, like more like sentimental faith. So Bhaktivinoda say that in Jaiva Dharma. So many devotees have written to me on different occasions. I'm a bit accustomed to some controversy. And they would say, no Maharaj, we are saying about, speaking about Anadi Karma, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur said this in Jaiva Dharma. Yeah, okay, I do not deny that, but we have to harmonize. I'm not thinking Bhaktivinoda Thakur was wrong, he didn't know about Jiva Goswami. But also, I say to that devotee once, okay, he said that in Jaiva Dharma. After he wrote Jaiva Dharma, there is one famous song book of Bhaktivinoda called Gita Bali, and there is one song that starts saying Anadi Karma Phale. He starts speaking about Anadi Karma. And after that he wrote one commentary to Brahma Samhita, and in some of the purports to the one verse, to some verses, he's speaking about karma without beginning. After he wrote Jaiva Dharma and said, apparently we fall from Brahman. So we have to put all in consideration. So if he says something else apart from the siddhanta, well, that must have been some preaching strategy. No problem. I mean, we are not. It's not an insult to the acharya to say that. Because if not, what we have to do, we have to take that as absolute, and we have to say again, Prabhupada say we fall from Golok. I cannot call it a preaching strategy. What do you call that? You will make a whole new siddhanta out of that idea. That's not pleasing to Prabhupada. So this is the idea actually. No? We do not fall from Vaikuntha. We do not fall from Brahman. We do not fall from anywhere. We are falling without beginning. And that's not a problem. I mean, because we may say, oh, why? Well, that starts the problem. We start to ask why, to question Krishna's idea. Because the point is the following. Someone may ask, why Krishna didn't make the things differently? So the point is that why Krishna didn't create us in a different way? So we will be eternally conditioned souls. But the point is that Krishna didn't create anything. He exists eternally with all his Shaktis. So we shouldn't judge God on the basis of what he created or he did not create, because he didn't create anything. Everything exists with him eternally. So we should judge, if you will, God according to how he behaves to those things that are already existing with him eternally. So the world exists eternally, the souls exist eternally. No? It's not that Krishna someday consider, okay, I will make this exist. Oh, I committed a mistake, I could have done it better. No, God exists, Shaktiman, the energetic one, and Shakti, the energies exist. So how does God behave to that which already exists? That's the real point. In order to free God from any defect. So, because God exists, Maya Shakti is there, material world is there, he cannot be neglectful to one of his Shaktis. He will be faulty of indifference. But material energy without souls doesn't make sense. I mean, the material world without souls in the material world. I mean, matter needs spirit to be activated. So, in order not to neglect material energy, there will be always souls activating material energy. And in order for those souls to have the chance of transcending material energy, there will be always the chance of getting in touch with bhakti. So the world is not without beginning, anadi. The presence of conditioned souls here is without beginning, anadi. But the presence of bhakti in the world is without beginning, anadi. So if we say, oh, why I am conditioned without beginning, Krishna will say, what? But without beginning I gave you bhakti also, if you wanted. So the world is always there. The world is always there, existing. The souls, conditioned souls, are always there. But bhakti is always there in the world, so we can go out of the world. So there is no fault in God. He's paying proper attention to the material world and he's paying proper attention to us, giving the chance of getting in touch with bhakti. But we had our free will to choose that or not. So maybe till this present lifetime, before this present lifetime, we were just wandering in another direction. But now we are having the chance of voluntarily choose bhakti. And that represents the end of all the material sojourn. And this in Sanskrit is called Srishti Lila. We have the Nitya Lila in Vaikuntha, but all this creation and we here and all this thing is also some Lila of Bhagavan. Called Srishti Lila. Means the Lila of creation, creational Lila. And Vedanta Sutra says Lokavatu Lila Kaivalyam. This world, all this material experience appears as an expression of the joy of Bhagavan. Without beginning, but its source is Krishna's source, happiness. Because if you properly understand who are you and what's the world, there's no problem with the world. Actually, it's not entangling anymore. And because of that, our acharyas do not pray to get out of the world, but to develop bhakti. When you have bhakti, the world becomes a paraphernalia to offer Krishna in service. This is what Prabhupada Bhakti Siddhanta said. He said the arti plate, incense, lamp, flower, represent the 5 elements: earth, air, water, fire, like this. And all this world is made of those 5 elements. So when you offer the arti, you are offering the world. The world is being represented in that plate. So what do we do with the world? We offer it first to Bhagavan. And after that we receive the remnants of the world in touch with Bhagavan, and that purifies us. So that ceremony is symbolizing this idea of entering in touch with the world, but only to offer it to Bhagavan. To see every atom as paraphernalia. So, and the whole world becomes an abode of joy. So Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says to Arjuna, Dukalayama Sashvatam. On one side he says, this world is miserable and temporary. But he's saying that for someone who is attached in a negative way. He said, Dukalayam, this world is full of misery. And you may say, for me it's not full of misery. I have just won the lottery. I'm going to Cancun. I'm so happy. But he mentioned the second term, asashvatam, means it's temporary. So no matter how nice you are enjoying now, it has an end. So that will be miserable. But on the other side, we found prayers like Vishwam Purnam Sukhayate, means the whole universe is an abode of joy. So the point is, the world is miserable if you are just exploiting it. But if you see the world with devotional eyes, it's full of joy, it's full of service opportunities. So as we say yesterday, try to change your angle of vision. That's your Maharaj will say. So these will be some words regarding your question. Of course we can, I know it's a complex topic, and if we were maybe accustomed to have another idea, as I had for many years, it may take some time to properly digest that, but that's actually the siddhanta regarding that particular topic of Jiva Tattva. So hopefully no controversies created by this. And it was not my plan to speak about that, but the question was there, so I feel, well, Krishna wants me to speak about that. And of course, sometimes controversy has a healthy side, if it takes us to think beyond our comfort zone, if you will. Not feeling like threatened, but invited to open the perimeter, to see the bigger picture, as you say in English. So this would be the idea. So that's Srishti Lila actually, no? So there will be always jivas in the world. Haridas Thakur once asked that to Mahaprabhu. He said, oh, no, when all the jivas here will be freed by your grace, the world will become empty. So what will happen to the world without jivas? It doesn't make sense. Mahaprabhu gave the siddhanta, said, no, there will be always new jivas. New, let's say new. I mean, jivas are unlimited. It's not like a limited number, so there will be a point that there are, all jivas are there in Vaikuntha and all here is empty. There are unlimited jivas. So there will be new again, no beginning, but coming, appearing in this world, another world. We should get accustomed to think in unlimited terms. We have to go beyond our head for that. This part cannot think in unlimited terms. So that's the idea, to go beyond that. But sometimes our acharyas didn't spoke these things in detail because they were already given some topics that were above our head, and they wanted us to be properly situated in that. Knowing with time they will know all the other further details, because Gaudiya Vaishnavism is really above our head, no? So we should learn to properly digest it in such a way that we don't become overwhelmed and we feel, oh, this is too much, I will leave it. So in proper doses we have to take it in such a way that it becomes nurturing, inspiring, but also always dynamic and progressive, and open to learn new things. Maybe you understood something for 15 years and you realize, oh, it was not the final idea about it. Okay, no problem. We continue growing. It's okay. We should be open to learn. What Sukadeva Goswami was speaking to Bhagavad, his own father and his guru's father, Vyasa and Narada, was there in the audience hearing him. They knew something new will appear there. We don't want to lose that. They were not thinking, I'm his father, Vyasa, and I'm his guru's father, I have nothing to learn from him. They understood the dynamic of this school is, always something new will come. So Srila Sri Maharaj said that, we are students forever. He was saying that, we are students forever. There will never come the time that you become a teacher. I mean, you may externally act as such, but internally you should feel yourself a student. Servant is a student, disciple is a student. In Goloka Vrindavan, everyone feels a disciple, student, servant. But everyone is the topmost teacher then. So that's a paradoxical nature of high things. So we should know how to deal with that. Was clear, or now you are much more confused than before?
I think that by your mercy I catch your vision. Question maybe there, but time is over. Maybe tomorrow. I understand that tomorrow we are still here.
I have no problem, yeah.
We can come in evening and continue.
Yes, of course.
I have in my crazy mind two topics about this, and I think that you can nicely explain some nice point about this.
And I have
connected with this topic which is spoken generally about this.
And in my crazy mind, I'm open to that.
Malati, if it's open, we can continue tomorrow.
Malati is absolutely happy with that idea.
Yeah, of course. My initial idea was that I was saying, Malati, why not something on Sunday? But she was explaining us, generally we do not do on Sunday, they were doing some other things, so okay. But if the audience wants, of course I'm still here, and I'm here for this mainly, so I'm happy to share with you.
Tomorrow we will continue.
Yeah, because I think today we already spoken almost more than 1 hour and a half, so also some time will help to digest for tomorrow's next meal, no? If you will. First digest this meal, tomorrow we continue, so we don't die of indigestion, no? So gradual. But yes, tomorrow if you want, at the same time we can meet and receive some other questions and topics connected with it. So thanks so much for all of you, for your time, for your
Hare
presence,
Krishna.
your questions. Shri Gurudev Pati Bhagavan ki jai, Shri
Jai.
Mahaprabhu ki jai,
Jai.
Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai,
Jai.
Shri Shri Radha Gopinath ji ki jai,
Jai.
Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai,
Jai.
Gaur Premanand.
Hari Bol.